The neon glow of the precinct sign buzzed overhead, casting an eerie light over Detective Mark Voss as he leaned against his unmarked car, flicking a cigarette into the gutter. He exhaled smoke into the cold night air, the ember burning bright before dying against the asphalt. Another shift. Another arrest. Just another night where his badge meant he could bend the rules until they broke. His reputation preceded him, a decorated cop with a ruthless edge, the kind of man who got confessions by any means necessary. Internal affairs had sniffed around him before, but nothing ever stuck. He had friends in high places, favors owed, and a knack for making problems disappear. Across the street, the dimly lit apartment complex was quiet, except for the occasional flicker of a TV behind thin curtains. Voss adjusted his holster, his fingers brushing the cool metal of his service weapon. Tonight's target was Elena Reyes, a name that meant nothing to him, just another low-level suspect in a drug sweep. The tip had been vague, but he didn't need much. A little planted evidence, some pressure, and she'd fold like the rest. He signaled to his partner, Detective Rayner, a wiry man with a nervous twitch, who knew better than to question Voss's methods. They moved in, boots heavy on the creaking stairs. No warrant, no backup, just the way Voss liked it. Less paperwork, less hassle. The door splintered easily under his kick. Inside, a woman scrambled up from the couch, her dark eyes wide with shock. A child's toy lay abandoned on the floor. Elena Reyes. Voss didn't wait for an answer. He was already pulling cuffs from his belt. What's happening? She demanded, her voice steady despite the fear tightening her throat. You're under arrest. He yanked her arms behind her back, the cuffs clicking shut. For what? Possession with intent. He nodded at Rayner, who tossed a small bag of white powder onto the coffee table. Elena's breath hitched. That's not mine. Voss smirked. Funny. They all say that. As he dragged her out, her son, no older than 6, appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Mama. Elena's composure cracked. It's okay, Misha. Go back to bed. I'll be home soon. Voss ignored the boy, shoving Elena toward the squad car. She twisted in his grip, her voice low and fierce. You're making a mistake. He leaned in, his breath hot against her ear. No, sweetheart, you are. The door slammed shut, sealing her inside. As the car pulled away, Voss glanced back at the apartment, at the small face pressed against the window. He felt nothing. Another night, another arrest. Just business as usual. The fluorescent lights of the county jail buzzed like angry wasps, flickering intermittently as Elena Reyes sat on the edge of a hard plastic bench, her wrists still raw from the handcuffs. Around her, the drunk tanks and holding cells echoed with the sounds of sobbing, cursing, and the occasional hysterical laugh, symphonies of desperation. But Elena didn't cry. She clenched her fists, replaying the arrest in her mind, the way Voss had smirked as he tossed the fake evidence, the way her son's voice had cracked when he called for her. She had worked as a legal aide for 6 years before budget cuts forced her out. She knew how cops like Voss operated. They relied on fear, on the assumption that people like her would crumble under pressure. But she wouldn't, not when her son's future was at stake. Across the room, a tired-looking public defender, Andrew Keene, shuffled through paperwork. He was young, overworked, and already defeated. Exactly the kind of lawyer the system assigned to people like her. When he called her name, she straightened her spine and met his gaze. They're charging you with possession with intent to distribute, he said, rubbing his temple. First offense, you might get probation if you plead. Elena leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. I didn't do it. That wasn't my drugs. Andrew sighed. It doesn't matter. Voss has a history of making cases stick. Fighting this will just make it worse. Then I'll make it worse. Andrew blinked, startled by the fire in her voice. Most of his clients just nodded, signed the plea and prayed for leniency. But Elena's eyes burned with something different. Calculation. She had seen cases like hers before, knew the shortcuts cops took when they thought no one was looking. Give me access to the discovery files, she demanded. If Voss planted evidence, there'll be a trail. Meanwhile, Voss sat in the precinct bullpen, boots propped on his desk as he scrolled through his phone, barely glancing up when his partner, Raina, dropped a file in front of him. Reyes is asking for the arrest report, Raina muttered. Voss snorted. Let her. She's nothing. But Raina shifted uncomfortably. She used to work in the courthouse. She knows how this shit works. Voss finally looked up, his smirk fading. Then make sure she learns how it really works. That night, in her cell, Elena scratched notes onto a napkin with a smuggled pen, mapping out Voss's history, arrests that led to sudden plea deals, suspects who recanted testimony after mysterious interviews. She needed leverage, and then she remembered the name scrawled on the margin of her arrest report. Liam Carter, a reporter who had covered police scandals before. If Voss thought she'd roll over, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. The fluorescent hum of the public library's computer lab was the only sound as Elena Reyes hunched over a keyboard, her fingers flying across the keys. Beside her, Liam Carter, the rumpled journalist with a nose for corruption, leaned in, his breath warm against her ear, as he pointed at the screen. There, he murmured. That's the case number from the sealed file. Voss was involved in a shooting 3 years ago, suspiciously ruled justified. But the witness statements vanished. Elena's pulse thrummed. This was it. The crack in Voss's armor. But across town, Voss wasn't idle. He sat in his car outside Elena's sister's apartment, where her son had been staying since CPS's routine check. He didn't need to go inside. He just wanted her to know he was watching. His phone buzzed. Raina. Texting. Reyes was just in the system digging up old cases. Voss's jaw tightened. He'd expected her to fold, to take the plea deal and slink away. Instead, she was fighting back. And worse, she'd dragged a reporter into it. Back at the library, Liam pulled up a police report from the shooting, redacted to near uselessness. But one name stood out. Officer Daniel Hartley. Hartley quit the force right after. Liam said, "If we can find him." Elena's phone vibrated. A photo of her son's school, time-stamped 5 minutes ago. No sender. Her blood turned to ice. The gunshot cracked through the abandoned warehouse district, like a whip, its echo bouncing off rusted metal and broken concrete. Elena Reyes froze, her breath trapped in her lungs, as Liam Carter's body jerked backward, his camera clattering to the ground. Blood bloomed across his shoulder, dark and glistening under the flickering streetlight. Voss stepped out of the shadows, his service weapon still raised, his face a mask of cold calculation. "Should have taken the deal, Reyes," he said, his voice almost conversational. "Now look what you made me do." Elena's instincts screamed at her to run, but Liam was gasping on the ground, his fingers clutching his wound. She couldn't leave him. Behind Voss, Raina emerged from the unmarked car, his face pale. "Jesus, Mark. You shot him." Voss didn't even glance back. He was resisting. "You saw it, right?" The unspoken command hung in the air. "Liam, or you're next." Elena lunged for Liam's fallen camera, still recording, but Voss was faster, his boot crushing the lens with a sickening crunch. "Oops," he muttered, grabbing her by the hair. "You just don't learn." Pain exploded across her skull as he slammed her against the car hood, her vision swimming. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Voss tensed. Who the hell called the cops? Raina backed away, hands raised. "Not me, man. I swear." The sirens grew loud. Voss hesitated, then released Elena with a shove. "This isn't over," he hissed before disappearing into the night. Elena collapsed beside Liam, pressing her hands to his wound, as his blood seeped through her fingers. "Stay with me." The world narrowed to the pulse fluttering in his throat, the distant scream of approaching help, and one searing thought. Voss had just made his first mistake. The parking garage was all concrete and shadows, the kind of place where sounds echoed too loud, and yet disappeared into the void. Elena clutched Hartley's files to her chest, her knuckles white, as she scanned the dimly lit space for Agent Colin Reeves, the man who was supposed to be her lifeline. The FBI had finally taken interest, or so the phone call had claimed. But the moment she stepped into the open, the hairs on the back of her neck stood up. A van's engine idled somewhere in the darkness, too quiet, too still. Then headlights flared to life, blinding her. She barely had time to register the silhouette of Voss, stepping out before hands seized her from behind, wrenching the files away. "You just don't quit, do you?" Voss's voice was almost amused as he flipped through the documents. Hartley really thought scribbling notes would save him. He lit a match, holding it to the corner of a page. The flame licked upward, casting grotesque shadows on his face. Elena struggled against the grip of the cop, holding her. Rainer. His fingers dug into her arms, but his breathing was ragged, his eyes darting. He wasn't as sure as Voss. Not anymore. Just as the last of Hartley's files curled into ash, Voss's phone rang. He answered with a smirk, then froze. The color drained from his face. What? A voice on the other end, cold and clear. Officer Hartley just walked into the U.S. Attorney's office. You're done. For the first time, Elena saw real fear in Voss's eyes. The flash drive felt like a live wire in Elena's palm as she plugged it into her laptop, the glow of the screen cutting through the dim light of her kitchen. Liam, still bandaged but relentless, leaned over her shoulder as the files loaded, then froze. Holy shit, he whispered. Spread before them wasn't just evidence against Voss, it was a blueprint. Payroll spreadsheets with coded entries, surveillance photos of judges, journalists, even a state senator, and at the center of it all, a name: the Shepherd. Elena's stomach dropped. Voss wasn't just a dirty cop, he was a cog in something far worse. The glow of the laptop screen cast eerie shadows across Elena's face as she scrolled through the files on Liam's flash drive, her pulse quickening with each new revelation. What had begun as a fight against one corrupt cop had unraveled into something far more sinister, a sprawling network of dirty officers, compromised officials, and shadowy figures referred to only by codenames. The deeper she dug, the clearer it became. Voss had merely been a pawn in a much larger game. A series of encrypted financial records showed monthly deposits to Voss's offshore account, each coinciding with high-profile case dismissals. Surveillance photos depicted judges and prosecutors in compromising positions with known crime figures, but most chilling was the recurring symbol, a stylized shepherd's crook, stamped on documents, detailing everything from evidence tampering to witness elimination. This isn't just corruption, Liam murmured, tracing the symbol on the screen. This is a system. Their discovery was interrupted by a crash from Elena's bedroom. Her son's terrified scream sent her racing down the hallway, where she found his window shattered, a brick lying amiding the broken glass. Tied to it was a note with a single word. The threat was clear, but as Elena clutched her shaking son, she realized the truth. They were already in too deep to walk away. Across town, in a nondescript office building, a group of men in expensive suits pored over the same documents Elena had just seen. She's getting close, one murmured, tapping a photo of Elena entering the courthouse. The man at the head of the table, the one they called Shepherd, didn't look up from his paperwork as he gave the order. Bring her in, and if she resists, make her another tragic statistic. As Elena and Liam pieced together the connections, a horrifying pattern emerged. Cases they'd thought were unrelated, the sudden resignation of an honest detective, the mysterious death of a key witness, even the suspicious overdose of a reporter who'd been investigating police misconduct, all bore the Shepherd's fingerprint. The system wasn't broken, it had been designed this way. The chapter climaxed with Elena making a desperate call to the only person she thought might still be trustworthy, the FBI agent who'd helped take down Voss. But as she spoke, she noticed the black sedan parked across the street, its occupant watching her window through binoculars. The agent's final words before the line went dead sent chills down her spine. Elena, listen carefully. Don't trust anyone, not even. Elena's fingers trembled as she double-locked the apartment door, her son's small hand clutching hers like a vise. The FBI safe house was supposed to be their sanctuary, a bland beige-walled duplex on the outskirts of the city, where no one would find them. Agent Colin Reeves had sworn it was secure, but as Elena peered through the blinds at the unmarked black SUVs circling the neighborhood like sharks, she knew the terrible truth. There were no safe places anymore. Liam sat at the kitchen table, his bandaged shoulder proof of how far Voss's allies would go, scrolling through encrypted files on a burner laptop. The Shepherd isn't just one person, he muttered, pulling up a blurred security photo of a man in a tailored suit, exiting a courthouse with 3 judges. It's a damn hydra. Cut off one head, and 2 more take its place. A knock at the door sent Elena's heart into her throat. Not the coded pattern Reeves had promised. Silence, then a voice like gravel. Elena, open up, we just want to talk. She recognized that voice. Deputy Chief Morales, the man who'd signed off on Voss's commendations, the man whose name appeared on 3 of the Shepherd's laundered payment logs. Elena backed away, her son's breath coming in panicked hitches against her leg. Liam silently slid a pistol from his waistband, mouthing "get down" as the knocking turned to pounding. Then the window shattered. The storm drains beneath the city smelled of rust and rotting concrete, the damp air clinging to Elena's skin as she clutched her son's hand,
dragging him deeper into the labyrinth. Behind them, the echoes of shouted orders and barking radios faded, but the fear didn't. It coiled in her gut like a live wire. The voice on the burner phone had led them here, promising sanctuary, but in the flickering glow of her dying flashlight, the tunnels seemed less like escape, and more like a tomb. Her son's whimper cut through the silence. "Mama, I'm scared." She wanted to lie, to tell him it would be okay, but the truth was a life in her ribs. They were hunted now by people who owned the streets, the courts, even the airwaves. Ahead, a shadow moved. Elena tensed, shoving her son behind her as a figure stepped into the dim light. Hartley, the man who was supposed to be dead. His face was gaunt, one eye swollen shut, but his grip was iron as he yanked her forward. "They're coming. Move." The safe house ambush had been a setup. Liam was gone, captured, or killed. She didn't. The shepherd's reach was longer than she'd imagined. Its roots sunk deep into the city's bones. Hartley led them through a maze of service tunnels, his breaths ragged. "Morales isn't just dirty. He's the shepherd's enforcer, and you're the loose end they can't afford." Elena's mind raced. The files Liam had decoded, the names they'd uncovered, judges, cops, a senator, all tied to a web of money and murder. But Hartley's next words froze her blood. They're not just covering their tracks, they're rewriting history. And Voss, he's their golden ticket. Somewhere above them, a manhunt raged. News vans blared headlines about a deranged cop killer. Her face splashed across every screen, while the real monsters sat in polished offices, signing orders over scotch. Hartley stopped at a rusted door, punching in a code. Inside, a makeshift war room, maps, weapons, and a wall of photos connected by red string. At the center, Deputy Chief Morales, shaking hands with a silver-haired man Elena recognized from campaign billboards. Mayor Richard Duval. Hartley's laugh was hollow. "It goes all the way to the top." Elena's son curled into a cot, exhausted. She watched his chest rise and fall, the only thing in her life still pure, and made her choice. No more running. Hartley handed her a pistol. "They'll find us here by dawn." She checked the clip. "Then we find them first." The email exploded across the city, like a frag grenade in a glass house. By dawn, every news outlet, every social media feed, every cop's phone was screaming with the evidence Elena had unleashed. Mayor Duval's face, once the picture of polished authority, now dominated screens with the caption, "The Shepherd Exposed." But Elena didn't have time to savor the chaos. Not with Liam still missing, not with Morales's men scouring the streets for her, and certainly not with the video that had arrived at a grainy cell phone clip of Liam bruised and bloody, chained to a chair in what looked like an industrial basement. His voice was raw, but his eyes were defiant as he rasped, "Elena, it's in the courthouse, the Black Ledger, end this." Then the camera panned to reveal Voss, clean-shaven and smug in his prison jumpsuit, holding a knife. Tick-tock, Reyes. Hartley's safe house was no longer safe. The streets teemed with both cops and protesters, the city splitting at the seams as Duval's denials crumbled under the weight of leaked documents. Elena crouched in the back of a stolen delivery van, her son asleep, against her shoulder, while Hartley drove with one eye on the rearview mirror. "Duval's scrambling," he muttered. "But Morales, he's gone rogue. That video's a trap." Elena knew he was right, but the Black Ledger, Liam's last clue, was the key to proving everything. The murders, the money trails, the decades of lies, and it was buried in the heart of the enemy's territory, the courthouse where this nightmare began. They moved at twilight, slipping through alleys choked with smoke from burning police barricades. The courthouse should have been locked down, but Hartley had called in a favor, a bailiff, whose brother was on the shepherd's retirement list. The side door clicked open. "You've got 15 minutes. The bailiff whiffed, his hands shaking. "Morales has men everywhere." The ledger was in Duval's private safe, behind a portrait of some dead judge. Elena's fingers trembled as she dialed the combination from memory. The date, on Duval's first campaign flyer. The safe opened with a sigh. Inside, a single leather-bound book, its pages crammed with names, dates, and amounts. And then she saw it, a receipt for a $2 million wire transfer, signed by Voss, dated the day after her arrest. Proof he'd been paid to frame her. A floorboard. Elena spun, but too late. Morales stood in the doorway, his service weapon aimed at her chest. "I told Duval you'd come here," he sighed, almost disappointed. Sentimental fools always do. Behind him, two tactical officers moved in, their rifles raised. Elena's hand inched toward her back pocket, toward the burner phone, recording everything. "How's the mayor going to explain this?" she spat. Morales's smile was thin, Who do you think signs the coroner's reports? Then the window shattered. Hartley's sniper round took Morales in the shoulder, spinning him into the wall. The tactical officers dove for cover as Elena lunged, snatching the ledger and bolting for the stairs. Gunfire erupted behind her, bullets chewing into wood and plaster. She hit the fire escape as the first explosion rocked the building. The protesters had breached the barricades. The courthouse steps were a war zone, cops clashing with citizens, cameras rolling as Elena erupted from the smoke, the ledger held high like a torch. Someone screamed. A reporter's spotlight swung toward her, and in that frozen second, Elena saw the dominoes begin to fall. The abandoned meatpacking plant reeked of blood and bleach, the flickering fluorescent lights casting jagged shadows across the rusted hooks dangling from the ceiling. Elena crouched behind a pallet of rotting crates, the ledger susted inside her jacket, her fingers curled around Hartley's Glock. Somewhere in the maze of slaughterhouse chambers, Liam was being held and Voss was waiting. The radio in her ear crackled as Hartley's voice came through, strained and static-laced. "SWAT's 5 minutes out. Duval's in custody, but half his cops are still loyal. They'll shoot first." Elena didn't answer. She was already moving, her boots silent on the slick concrete, her pulse hammering as she rounded the corner and saw them. Voss, in a tactical vest, like he was still a cop, pressing a knife to Liam's throat. Liam's face was a mess of bruises, one eye swollen shut, but he managed a grin when he saw her. "Took you long enough," Voss laughed, the sound echoing off the stainless steel tables. "You brought the ledger. Good, hand it over, and I'll make his death quick." Elena raised the gun, her arms steady, despite the tremor in her bones. "You don't get to make deals anymore. The whole city knows what you are." Voss's smirk faltered, just for a second, before he tightened his grip on Liam. "Doesn't matter. People like me always will." Then the lights went out. Hartley's doing. In the darkness, chaos erupted, shouting, the clatter of metal, Liam's grunt, as he elbowed Voss in the ribs. Elena dove forward, her shoulder slamming into Voss's stomach, as the knife clattered to the floor. They crashed into a table, rolling, punching, Voss's breath, hot and rancid in her face, as he snarled, "You're nothing without that badge." Elena kneed him in the groin, then grabbed the knife. Wrong. The gunshot was deafening. For a heart-stopping second, Elena thought she'd been hit. Then Voss staggered back, his vest darkening with blood. Hartley stood in the doorway, smoke curling from his pistol. "SWAT's here. Time to go." But Voss wasn't done. With a guttural roar he lunged, knocking Elena into the wall, his hands closing around her throat. The world tunneled, her vision spotting, Liam's shouts distant, as she clawed at Voss's fingers. Then another shot. Voss collapsed, his weight crushing her legs. Above them stood a rookie cop, her service weapon trembling in her hands. I couldn't let him," Elena gasped, shoving Voss's body aside, as Hartley hauled her up. Liam was already at the door, swaying but alive. Outside, sirens wailed, the flashing lights painting the slaughterhouse in streaks of red and blue. 3 days later, Elena sat on the steps of the courthouse, the same steps where this nightmare had begun, watching as Duval, Morales, and a dozen others were marched into federal custody. The headlines called it a clean sweep, but she knew better. The shepherd was gone, but the system that bred him still stood. Liam, his arm in a sling, dropped beside her with a groan. "You okay?" She looked down at her hands, still scraped from the fight. No, but for the first time in months, her son slept soundly in his own bed. Hartley found them there, tossing her a file. Voss's prison commissary records. He was paying someone on the outside, someone we missed. Elena didn't open it. Not yet. Some battles could wait. The sun was rising.